So to start the conversation will be County Executive-elect Jason Garner and Assistant Dean Milton Chester. So this first question is actually from myself. Binghamton University students make up 9% of Broome County, and we have contributed about $12.4 million worth of volunteer and internship hours into the local community. So after the presidential election of 2016, how can we increase student engagement in politics and representation in not only local government, but also state government? And once again, all the panelists have an opportunity to answer these questions after our first two guest speakers.
So, having students work on my campaign was a pretty amazing experience, and I'd like to say it was an eye-opener, but it really wasn't, because I've seen what students can bring to the table in terms of helping Broome County. But like I spoke in my opening statements, I think it's a reciprocal relationship. I think that there's a lot the students can give the community, and I think there's a lot that the community can give the students. And one of the things that I really did not want to see happen is I've seen a lot of elected officials, and it goes both parties. This is a bipartisan complaint that I've had, that will show up at college campuses and, right before the election, they have a pizza party and they say, "Come vote for me." And really, that's not how I wanted to engage students. I started talking to students well over a year before the election even happened. But I think the most important thing is after the election is, what do we do now? And one of the things that I really want to do is create some type of either a task force, a county executive advisory board, or an office of student affairs, where students can regularly meet with not just myself, but all my department heads at least once a month, and talk about initiatives and issues that are occurring up at Binghamton University. And so my department heads can be involved in that and help out. And also, we want to talk about initiatives that we're doing in Broome County as well. So if students want to be a part of that, they can be a part of that. I saw the energy, the enthusiasm, and just the skill set that students brought to my campaign. I really think that this can translate into enacting public policy and using student power to do that. In addition to that, right now, for the next 6 weeks, I'm the Director of Public Communications for Family Planning in South Central New York. We have interns from Binghamton University that come every semester. They are extremely brilliant. They give a lot of energy and enthusiasm to our organization. I see an internship program, like I would like to build one in Broome County like never seen before. I've had professors come up to me, like I'm on the land bank, which is an arm of Broome County that helps to revitalize blighted areas and clean up areas. I've had professors saying, we have an army of students just in our one department that would be willing to help write grants for you, get in on the ground and really work to find ways to clean up your area. And I see this happening throughout many of our departments. And I just want to unleash all that energy that's up here at the university into Broome County. I think there'd be a much needed infusion of energy and skill set into the county that could really help our department heads. And on the flip side of that, I think that'd be great for you guys to have that type of experience as you apply to a master's degree program, or if you graduate and you go right out into the workforce, you have that type of real world experience doing whatever it is you want to do in county government. We have over 30 different departments. There's probably something for everyone in Broome County for students to be involved with. And I have absolutely pledged, and I'm continuing to do that we will be involved and we will work together to make Broome a better place to live in.
So on November the 9th, the day after the election, our Vice President for Multicultural Affairs for the Student Association called a meeting. The purpose of the meeting was for students to express how they were feeling after this recent election. It was in the Hemming dining hall, and the room was packed. And what I saw at that meeting was student after student after student after student expressed fear. They expressed fear for what they believe this election held for them personally. They expressed fear for what they felt that this election held for their family members, and they just expressed fear for the unknown. I mean, they just didn't know what to expect from our president-elect. I thought a lot about that. I thought a lot about that in the last few days. And I think if I had the opportunity to speak to those students, I would say to them, and I would say to you tonight in terms of answering this question, is that we can't operate within the spirit of fear. We just can't. We can't do that. Why? Because fear paralyzes us. We won't get anywhere by being afraid. While I certainly understand that there was a lot said during this election that would make some people fearful. There was a lot said that probably most of us would consider, or some of us would consider to be, just kind of outside of the boundaries, for a presidential election. We still can't allow that, to make us afraid. We have to begin to engage the process. And so that's what I would say to those students. You have to begin to engage. And I would give them 4 tips as students here at Binghamton University as to how I feel that they can begin to engage. Number 1, so I think this was just said earlier, we had over 2,000 students registered to vote. Well, I think that's wonderful. But why stop at 2,000? Why not make it 3,000? Just because the election is over doesn't mean that we have to stop registering students to vote. So continue to register students to vote, because there will be another election 2 years from now, another one 2 years after that. Point 2, what I would share with students is make sure that you continue to fully inform yourself on the issues. So when I president-elect or soon-to-be president, start talking about issues such as, repealing Obamacare or deporting 2 or 3 million people, fully inform yourself on that. Bringing speakers, bringing people to help you understand the issues and understand how those issues will impact you and how those issues will impact those around you and others and so forth.
I think you should run for office. Seriously, if you're a student and you really love and appreciate this community, and you are someone who's considering staying here after you graduate, and you maybe think that you want to run for office someday, why not do it now? And honestly, what's the worst that can happen? You lose and you piss some people off. We've all lost different things, and we definitely all piss people off. But really, I think that the way that you lose is that you didn't work hard enough. 9 out of 10 times in an open, competitive race, the person that loses is the one that didn't work hard enough. So maybe you aren't from Binghamton originally, or maybe you are just too young and you look like you're 6 years old, or whatever it is. That doesn't matter, because when people see you pounding on doors, hitting the pavement, and working harder than they've literally ever seen anyone work for anything in your life, they're going to forget all of that, and they might come out and support you, and you're going to be in a position where you can hopefully affect more change than you could before. Now, that doesn't mean that, just because you're a student, you should run for office. But it does mean that you shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't be paralyzed because of that fact. There have been talks already. Earlier this year, months ago, back in spring semester, there was a student interested in running for county ledge in this very district. And I had, when I heard about it, I was really excited. And we had, you know, an honest conversation about it. And I was ready to fully support him and put my and campaign for him and do everything. But then he told me that, you know, he couldn't be here over the summer because he had to go to summer camp. And that's when I said, never mind. Because there is really a requirement to want to stay in this community, to want to make this community better, and you need to try harder and be better just because you have hurdles that you need to overcome. I can talk a lot more about this, but honestly, my answer to how can you get involved after the presidential elections, consider running for office. That's the best answer I can give you.
Just be very quick if I could. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. 44% growth from last year is pretty impressive. I'm sure any of us would like to see our savings account or the stocks that we were invested in increase by 44%. That's pretty good. I actually have one part-time staff member that works in the Senate office that's currently a Binghamton University student, and I have 2 full-time staffers who are recent graduates of Binghamton and Albany, so I'm pleased to have them on my staff. I want to defer the rest of my time, though, to Mr. Chester because I was incredibly interested in what he had to say. So, would you finish point 3 and 4? I'm deferring my time to you.
Point 3. Just simply, the students, continue to build your coalition. As students, I encourage you to seek out those who think differently, and find similarities. And as you find similarities, you begin to expand your tent. Because remember, again, in 2 years, there will be another election. And my 4th point, students, is it's okay to question authority. I think one of the issues that a lot of our students run into is that they feel that they can't question authority. And what I say to them is that one of the beautiful things about living in America is that the Constitution gives us the right to express ourselves. And nowhere in that Constitution have I read that because you're a student, you have to be, you can't express yourself as assertively as a non-student. And so, it's okay to question authority.
I wanted to say, as far as the national election goes, whether you were for or against Donald Trump, in the end, what we're hearing is that Americans were disenfranchised. And that is why they chose Donald Trump to be our president. I'm going to say that really we should put the responsibility back at the feet of all of those people who said they were disenfranchised. Because I'm willing to bet that very few of them, I can't even imagine how small the percentage would be, of Americans bothered ever writing a letter to their senator, to their congressman, to the president, visited DC, went to Albany. What we need is to show them, in order to have change in America, we need to create the change. And I believe that you students can teach the generations above you how to do that. And I think that by getting involved in local politics and what's going on in Broome County, you can do that. You can teach the rest of us how to change.
Thank you so much. All right, so our second question is going to be focused on education, which goes hand in hand with student engagement. And this will be from John.
Good evening. My question is, in 2015, Binghamton City School District's graduation rates lowered 6% to a new D4%, while the New York State average graduation rate would remain 78%. So my question is, what provisions are necessary to promote greater student retention and to lower dropout rates?
Well, just one thing about me is that you should know that I often say things that get myself in trouble. And this is probably one of those questions that I'm going to say something to get myself education is something I'm very passionate about, something that I just feel strongly and deeply about. Now, I had, living here in the area, I mean, I certainly had heard that, the graduation rate for the city of Binghamton was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. To hear that nearly 50% of the students are graduating, in my opinion, is just unacceptable. I mean, how do we allow that to happen? How do we allow that to exist? I guess I was just shocked to realize that. But what I would say to students in regards to that particular issue is, you have to get involved. You have to, kind of engage the leadership. How do you engage the leadership? By attending some of the board meetings that are open board meetings. The next time there's an open seat on the school board, just run for school board. Just kind of get involved in those things. Another thing as students that you can do, to get this particular issue, I think, is, to volunteer, mentor, be a mentor in the Binghamton industry. I know that the Promise Zone program is something that, from what I've heard, it is very successful. So, get involved in the school district, provide your talents, and offer your talents to help the students within the school district.
So the next guest speaker will like to tackle the question on education.
So I think if you were to go to compare the poverty level of school districts, I think we have 12 or 13 school districts in Broome County. I think where the poverty level goes is where the graduation rate goes. The communities that are most impoverished are typically the ones that have the lowest graduation rates. But I think the question was, what can students do to help increase graduation rates? And I think Milton said it best. I think the Promise Zone is an excellent after-school program that is a collaboration between Broome County and Binghamton University and other nonprofit groups in the area. And I look at, my parents were teachers. My mother was an English teacher. My dad was and kind of still is a professor at Broome Community College. I taught for 15 years American history and government. And what students need is they need mentors. You have a lot of students, I lived in Binghamton for 15 years. They're growing up in single-parent households. Sometimes you're not growing up in households that have any parents. They need people who can mentor them, and they need role models. And I would say, as students, look at the school that you're in. You guys are the cream of the crop. You make up some of the brightest students in the world, actually. This is a top-notch university, and not only are you the brightest, you bring so many other skills to the table. You just can't get into Binghamton University with a 95 average and good SAT scores. You have a wealth of skills and talents that you bring to this university. And what I would say is, consider getting involved in the Promise Zone, because this can connect people who are very successful like you to people who have really never been surrounded by success and can fuel off that. And I've seen it happen. I've seen these relationships form where you have students that were mentored by college students and they actually had a shot. They saw what success meant, and it helped them. And just the power of being a role model and mentor, and just taking a few hours a week. The Children's Home, the Wyoming Conference, is a great program to get involved with too. I think they have a mentor program as well. And just spending a few hours with students, going to a ball game, or going fishing, or doing whatever it is you like to do, and giving them some attention is probably one of the best things you can do for them, and getting them moved in the right direction.
Let me just offer a couple of thoughts, if I may. I think parental and family engagement are critically important to this particular issue. I'm a big proponent of local control when it comes to public education too, not having bureaucrats make major decisions for things that are happening on the ground. But I want to echo something that County Executive-elect said about the poverty issue. 1 in 2 children in the city of Binghamton live in poverty. 1 in 4 in Broome County live in poverty. And that's a major issue. And we're talking about education, whether it be higher education or public education, really comes down to funding, right? And at the state, we have some areas for improvement. I'm sure the Assemblywoman would agree with me that we are using a foundation aid formula for public schools in this state that is using data that's 9 years old. A foundation aid formula that has these false floors and ceilings when it comes to poverty and wealth. So I think moving forward, it's incumbent upon state elected officials to really work hard on updating that foundation aid formula and getting rid of these false floors and ceilings when we're trying to determine true poverty and true wealth. Because I happen to agree with Jason. I think that poverty is, plays a huge factor in this particular issue.
Well, hi everyone. I feel like I just sort of dropped in the middle of a dinner party. I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about, but I got the general idea, and I certainly am very supportive of the overall effort that you have underway here. And this level of student engagement is long overdue, and something that we've wanted to see for a very, very long time, where students can be truly a part of the community, as opposed to someone who just drops in for an occasional dinner party, or drops in for an occasional internship, or something that just is so fleeting. I'm a person who moved here for graduate school 40 years ago, and I was captivated by this place where Rod Serling was born and raised, not born, but was raised, and where so much interesting innovation occurred. Unfortunately, right now, we're seeing students, as my colleagues have mentioned, who are living in really tough circumstances, very high levels of poverty. And we have supported the Empire State Poverty Reduction Initiative, which is bringing a focus to cities like Binghamton in the Southern Tier and other places across the state. One of the things that we have learned, rather than repeating what everyone else has said, one of the things we've learned is that these children are living with trauma, that we've had to educate ourselves, and the degree to which you can be helpful would be good for you to become familiar with the trauma of poverty. As we try to engage these children, I have found that without knowing what it's like to the trauma of coming to school without an adequate meal, the trauma of not having proper clothing, or having had that parental support, we're approaching these children in a much different way than, hi, I'm here to help you. We want to mentor them, but unless we can get a clearer sense of the challenges that they face, we're going to be, I think, really missing the true connection that we need to make with these kids. We're in a great spot to be very helpful and very influential if we can change our mindset away from we're here to help you and more into tell us about your lives so that we can have a better understanding of the circumstances that keeps these families in poverty, and that's lack of transportation, lack of good child care, lack of training and skills. I think it's more than being sympathetic and wanting to help. It's really embracing them in a way that recognizes how difficult their lives are.
Last year, I had the pleasure of having a visitation arrangement with a little boy that had been in my care for foster care prior. And one time we were having a visit, and he was saying that he hated school. So I said, well, why do you hate school? And he said, I hate it because I'm so tired. I hate school because I can't get up and I can't concentrate, I'm too tired. So I teased him, and I said, well, maybe you need to go to bed earlier. And he said, it's not that. It's that I'm so hungry, I can't sleep. So I would echo what everyone is saying here. If there's any way with this student, for this student body to connect with the youth of our community, when you think about 47% of children being food insecure, 47% of the kids saying things like that, like I can't even sleep because I'm so hungry, then I have to go to school, I'm overtired, and I can't concentrate. That's horrific. That should not be happening with any child. They need mentors, they need people in their life that can show them hope, give them hope, bring them a granola bar. So I'm really grateful that your student body is asking this question and saying that you would like to have an impact on this because you are the best of the best. You know, you didn't get here by, you know, an easy road. So you are the best of the best, and I believe that you truly can have an impact in our community, and you could literally change the lives and the future of the young people in our community. So I'm truly thankful that you're willing and considering doing that, and I would just implore you to do that. And one other thing, I think that you're going to keep seeing reoccurring themes tonight. We're going to talk about poverty and look at how poverty affects education. We're going to talk about the heroin epidemic, and Ms. Lupardo just mentioned how children are traumatized by their conditions of poverty. They're also traumatized by the conditions of, many of them are living with parents who are heroin addicted individuals. So just a few weeks we had a 14-year-old girl find her mother dead in her bed from a heroin overdose. So what the children are going through in our community is absolutely incredible and overwhelming, and they could really use smart, bright young people that can show them hope for the future. So we appreciate that.
I think that there's a lot of room for advocacy on this issue for those interested. As I'm sure you know, a lot of these kids that are graduating come from unstable homes, and school is supposed to be a place of stability, and we don't have that here in Broome County in a lot of ways. We need to have a county where students can go to school and feel like this is their reliant space. And there's a lot of work that we can actually do together and make that happen. You may have heard about some serious, and I mean serious bullying going on in City of Binghamton schools. And that's something that university students, can talk about their own experiences with the children of Broome County. I think a lot of us in this room have probably faced a bully once in their life, at least. I know I have. So really getting into the community, talking about your own experiences could be really beneficial. And then there's a lot of room for advocacy that you could have on the school board. And if we're talking about creating, a stable space for children in Broome County and schools, especially for students of color, that's actually a really big issue. We're seeing some really scary statistics right now of how children of color in schools in our county are being suspended at really, really, really high rates compared to white students. So if you are, a student coming from an unstable home and then coming to school and maybe you've, be a kid and there's a no tolerance policy and then you get suspended right away, you're just sort of setting yourself up for a poor future based on policies that obviously have good things in mind but just aren't working. There's a lot of things that we can do by going to school board meetings and speaking out on these issues that every single person in this room can really play a part in. So I would encourage you to do that.
So my question is, how do you propose making treatment opportunities more accessible and more suitable for patients needing long-term therapy?
I love that the university has tackled this issue, and I'm glad that you all recognize it's one of the biggest issues of the day. It's probably the biggest issue of your generation. Certainly it's the biggest healthcare crisis in the history of the United States. It's killed more people than the AIDS epidemic. It's killed more people than any of our wars have. And when you think about that, that's kind of overwhelming and crazy. I agree that we do have inadequate treatment in Broome County and throughout New York State and really throughout the nation. Our growth of treatment has not increased at the rate of the growth of deaths. So obviously we're not In addition to that, we're using a model for treatment that's about 70 years old. I don't know if any of you attended the debate last week here on campus that was about safe injection sites. But we had one of the leaders of our local treatment centers present at it, and he point blank said, our treatment is ineffective. So the biggest provider of treatment in Broome County, who provides outpatient treatment and inpatient treatment, short-term inpatient, said our treatment is ineffective. Well, that's pretty sad. So here we are providing people treatment that we know is absolutely ineffective, and it's becoming a revolving door. So what we need is long-term inpatient treatment. We need follow-up recovery care for people who have gone through treatment, and we need to start all of this with what our organization calls a humane detoxification program. So most other countries, besides the US, for some reason, use a humane detox when people are coming off of heroin. They usually use Suboxone or methadone. In the US, and especially here in Broome County, we expect people to kind of tough it out, which is a little bit crazy. So we believe that we need a medical detox, long-term treatment. We also need greater access to medical-assisted treatment, which would be methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol. None of these things come fast, easy, or cheap, but that's where we need to hold our government responsible. The fact that this is an epidemic that is growing at the rate that it's growing, and we're having a non-emergency response to it, is terrible. If there were a flood, if there were a fire, if there were earthquakes, you would see, all forces hitting the street, and the government would be responding with a very fast, quick action. I really believe that it has to do with the stigma and the fact that we are viewing these people as people who made this choice, and we're letting them be throwaway members of society. That we cannot accept that anymore, and we need your generation to help us speak up and address this issue. We need to require our government to respond to this as if it's the emergency healthcare crisis that it actually is. They need to put treatment in place immediately, not tomorrow, not next year. It needs to happen right now. And they need to start looking at new modalities for treatment. We can't keep using treatment that even the providers say is failing. We have to look at new methods of treatment. This is an opportunity, especially for Binghamton University that has a psychology department. This is an opportunity for you guys to make some real progressive changes in how we actually treat, talk about, and provide treatment for addiction. So I would love the university to get involved and help us. The greatest thing right now is holding the government responsible and providing the emergency funding needed so that we can get that treatment center that's outlined in your blueprint, which is excellent.
We try to do this quickly because it's really a complex issue. There's so many things that we can talk about specifically on this particular issue. But just to dovetail on some of the things that Alexis said, this year I think the legislature did a good job in terms of working in a bipartisan manner, which doesn't always happen in Albany. I get that. I think that we put forth some pretty substantial reforms in terms of this particular issue. It is extremely complex, and there's no one simple solution to any of these problems. But a couple of things. We tore down some barriers in terms of prior approvals for people seeking inpatient care, right? So now, Alexis, you'll disagree with me on this, and I know where you stand, but insurance companies can't get involved. It can't say no at the front end anymore, right, until the 14th day. I know it's not long enough, but it used to be the insurance companies could say no the day that people showed up to the door. They can't do that. And another thing we've done is streamline the utilization review process. For too many times in this state, different insurance companies were using different utilization reviews, right? So if you were sick, your insurance company said you could stay, yours said you couldn't, mine said I could, or maybe I could. Now we're streamlining that process. And to dovetail again on something Alexis says, we're requiring now that there's an appropriate discharge plan in place for people when they're moving throughout the system, right? We heard all too often that somebody was leaving inpatient and going to seek outpatient care, will come back in 2 weeks or come back in 3 weeks. That's not an appropriate discharge plan. We got rid of the barriers in terms of insurance companies having to give prior approval for medical assisted treatment, as Alexis said. And so no longer can, if the doctor says that somebody should go on Suboxone or Vivitrol, no longer can insurance companies say no. The doctor prescribes that, they're supposed to get that. I want to talk about just what we're trying to do, the team and I, locally, to deal with this issue, because there's so much more to do just than do things legislatively, right, in Albany. We are trying to take a multifaceted or multi-pronged approach to dealing with this particular issue. We partnered with ACBC this year, the Addiction Center in Broome County, gave them some funding so they can increase their ambulatory detox capabilities here in Broome, which is important. We partnered with Lourdes Hospital to bring substance abuse counselors back into our public schools. We saw a time when those counselors were removed from the schools. The team and I are having these Shed the Med events throughout the entire 52nd Senate District, where we're telling people, just come in and get rid of your prescription pain medication. No questions asked, we'll get rid of it for you. We're also having Narcan training the same night. Narcan is critically important. I'm continuing a program that Senator Libous started, Yes Safe Choices. We've rebranded that program and completely changed the focus to deal with the heroin and the opioid crisis. This is a peer-based program that uses older children in public schools to educate younger kids on the dangers of drugs and alcohol.
Excuse me, 51 seconds.
You want me to stop 51 seconds to go?
15.
Thank you. 650 leaders in this program throughout SD 52 that touch over 5,000 kids. I think that's a pretty important program to keep in place. Again, it's a complex problem, but we're working on it as hard as we can. Thanks.
So in 2015, Broome County had the highest index crime and property crime rates in New York State. So my question to the panelists is, how can we reduce crime to improve public safety for not just students, but for all citizens? Thank you.
Well, in my humble opinion, the property crime was driven, those numbers were driven because of the heroin and the opioid issue. I mean, no secret, right, that my background is in law enforcement, and prior to being elected to the Senate, we were having home burglaries where people were cutting out the copper pipes in people's homes to scrap it, at the scrap yard so they can go out and buy their heroin. So I think that drove a lot of that, and I think if we can get this particular problem under control, that will help reduce the overall crime numbers in our community.
So again, this is one of those questions where we have like re-emerging themes. So why do we have crime? Most often it's going to be in situations where people are stuck in poverty situations, or they feel there's no hope or no way out or no opportunities. And if you look at Broome County, you look at the poverty rate, you look at 50% of the kids being hungry, this is going to happen. It is absolutely inevitable that this is going to happen. Then on top of it, you have the heroin epidemic, which we're finding in Broome County, now that we're getting real numbers on the death overdose rates. We might be higher than the whole New York State average for overdose rates in Broome County, which is pretty crazy. And it's true that people who are addicted to heroin, I shouldn't say all of them, but most of them will do pretty much anything to get that drug. They view it, once they're addicted, as life or death survival. So if your car's sitting there and it has some cash in it, they're probably going to break in it and steal the money. What we do in response to that is we send them to jail, and then we don't give them addiction treatment there, and then we put them back out on the streets, and then over 65% of them are re-arrested within 6 months. So we're not treating the actual underlying problems. We have to make treatment accessible. We just put out a survey to people, and one of the questions that we asked is, while you're waiting for treatment, actively, specifically waiting for your treatment, do any of these statements apply to you? And one of them was, committed a crime to get the drug that you need. So you committed a crime, and this is, self-reporting, people just admit this. It was like 65% of them said yes. So 65% of the people, they're actively waiting for treatment. They said, please help me. nobody's helping them, they're committing crimes. So we as a community need to address the crime rate in a holistic approach. We need to address poverty, we need to address economic development, we need to give people hope, we need to give people jobs, and then we need to give people treatment who are addicted to substances. Incarceration is not solving any of these problems at all. We're only driving people into a perpetual state of hopelessness, and they can't do better. So that's my thought on that.
Great. Any other guest speakers would like to touch on the topic of hair epidemic and safety?
Just real quick, a lot of people know my personal story. My brother was a heroin addict for a number of years. He's been sober for about 5 years now. But I didn't know much about the Broome County heroin epidemic until I had my house burglarized by him and his girlfriend. And that was an eye-opener for me. And it was an eye-opener to see just how, there's 62 counties in New York, and we're number one for all crimes, index crimes, but also number one for property theft crimes as well. And what was interesting for us, just on a personal level, was that the police were great. I mean, the police that we have in this community, I think, are some of the best around the country. They're extremely well trained, work very well with people in the community. They came over that night. They took my wife in the morning to a pawn shop, a couple of pawn shops that were known to be places where people would go and take the jewelry. My wife's jewelry was completely cleaned out. And when she got there, come to find out, they actually took pictures of all her jewelry. So she's looking at all the pictures, she's like, where is it? Can I have it back? And I said, no, we melted down the night that we get it. And at that point, I think she was more upset with the guy that owned the pawn shop than my brother. The good news with him, he's been sober for 5 years. It's a great story, but I think there's a serious problem in this community when you own a pawn shop, you obviously know who's coming in there. If somebody's coming in there at 11 o'clock at night with a bunch of jewelry and they're willing to sell it to you for pennies on the dollar, something's got to change there. And that's just one of probably 200 things that have happened. Well, I do want to say really quickly, because I know there's a time constraint, is I'm really excited to work with people like Fred and Donna and Alexis. I think in terms of where we were a year ago, it's like night and day. And you're seeing, somebody like Fred who arrested a lot of people and just did his job, but speaking for the community and saying, we can't arrest our way out of this anymore. We've got to find other ways to do this. So it's really great to see that happen, and I'm really excited to work with it. We a year ago, there really wasn't a lot happening, and I have to say it's a testament to people like Alexis who are on the ground working, talking to us about it, and feeling this, and telling us what needs to happen. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think we're only going to do a better job as time goes on.
The question was how we can root out poverty. So one of the things that we've learned by our Empire State Poverty Reduction Initiative, which began in Rochester and now is spreading out through the rest of the state, is that we really don't know how to root out poverty unless we talk to people who are poor. One lesson that I've learned when I pulled up to my first meeting of the Empire State Poverty Reduction Initiative in Broome County with a parking lot full of Acuras and Lexuses, the people in the room probably really didn't have a clue as to what exactly people, quote, in poverty were experiencing. So the local approach has been a little bit different than it's been taken in other places, is that we're going out into the communities and just simply sitting down and talking to people about the challenges that they're facing. And as I mentioned earlier, rooting out poverty is a matter of finding out what are the barriers that people are experiencing to living a better life. And when it is, again, when we're looking at trauma, when we're looking at factors that the Rochester studies have shown us, institutional racism, criminal justice, the need for criminal justice reforms, the lack of adequate transportation, lack of child care, lack of your basic a basic skill set, because they may have been living in generational poverty. So we can train people, but if they don't have the cultural skill set of getting that alarm going, having proper clothing, a resume, all of this coaching and mentoring makes it very hard to quote out of poverty. So I'm interested in simply listening to people, giving them the space, giving them the opportunity to tell us their story. You know, what is the story of local poverty? And it's different. It's the generational, the people with generational poverty, but it's also those folks who had a good paying job and are now working at Walmart. It's those folks who, you know, working 3 part-time jobs. There's no one continuous story here. There are numerous narratives, and we're looking to put a face to it, understand it, and bring all the resources we can to bear at every level of government to try to help overcome these challenges. But I can't presume to have walked in these folks' shoes. We're certainly trying to listen and learn more.
I'll get to the student question in just a sec, but you know, I represent half of my district is the north side of Binghamton, which is one of the most impoverished areas in our entire county. So I think about this a lot. You know, I pontificate as I go to sleep, and it's really hard. But I knock on doors all the time, and I'm talking to people that live in poverty every single day, and there are some things that we can do locally to help. Again, you guys can help in advocacy, but what's really important right now is transportation. On the north side, we've seen transportation cuts, but you know, we don't even need to get into the politics of it. Even before the cuts that have been happening, there hasn't been enough transportation service to the impoverished areas of our city. To people that don't have a lot of money and often don't have cars, public transportation is a vital service. You know, they are not comparable, but to some people, it's a vital service just like police, just like fire. It really is. It's the way that they take their children to school. It's the way that they get to work. And if we want to have a community that beats the cycle and the cyclical nature of poverty in our county, we need to start treating public transportation like a vital service. Nothing will change until we do that. There's also the food desert issue, which is just disgusting. You know, that there are people in our county that don't live anywhere in walking distance of a grocery store, yet they live in an urban core in the southern tier. So working on that, you know, we've started with mobile markets and stuff like that on the north side. The Binghamton Blueprint talks about creating a food co-op, which I love, so there's a lot of work that can be done there as well. But at the end of the day, none of that is a substitute for what we really need to do, which is bring a grocery store to the areas which have these food deserts. Well, we're trying to do that, but we're having trouble with that. So, anyway, how can we incentivize Binghamton University students to stay in Broome County after they graduate? And I think the obvious answer to this question, which is the hardest, is they need to have jobs to apply for when they graduate. But there's actually a couple of steps that need to happen before you can even get there. And what needs to happen is that, you know, if you're a senior at Binghamton University, you need to actually be thinking about staying in this community in the first place. So obviously we need to have jobs to apply for, but there's a lot of folks, hopefully not in this room, but there's a lot of kids at this university that really write Binghamton and Broome County off. There's a lot of negativity, there is a lot of, actually like really discussing name calling, but we need to sort of change the perception that students have of our community and make it, you know, not only a home for the 4 years that you're here, but we need to make it so that every single student that comes to Binghamton, no matter where you come from, considers staying in the area and could be excited to stay in the area after they graduate. And the question is, how do we do that? I think one of the most important steps to doing that is we need to make Binghamton a city that students want to make a life in. So we are an urban core, or at least we're supposed to be, so we need to create a city that actually resembles that, right? Downtown, and the neighborhoods around it need to be more walkable. We need to create a city that students want to live in. You know, if I had complete control, every single reinvestment in infrastructure in the city would follow a complete streets narrative, where you see bike paths, where you expand sidewalks, where you create a city of the future. And that's really the direction that we need to go in. Also, when considering how do we get students to stay in this area, I sort of like to reflect on my own experiences, because I am a student that isn't from Binghamton, yet came to Binghamton and decided quite quickly that this is a community that I want to stay in. And I sort of think about, you know, how did I get to that point? And it really took
15 seconds.
Getting involved in the community, volunteering, and by meeting people in the community, you realize that positive impact that you can make. And by making a positive impact, you get invested in the community. And suddenly you fall in love not only with the people, but with the hidden gems that this community has to offer. So exactly what you guys are doing here today is an example of what's necessary to solve this issue.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So we actually have a few minutes for the audience to ask any questions on any of the topics that were covered tonight, or anything that our guest speakers spoke about. So unfortunately, we don't have wireless mics, so you'll have to come up on stage and stand at the podium. It's kind of fancy, but if you have any questions? Great.
So the pamphlet distributed at this meeting says that 60% of respondents felt that their opinions aren't heard, and 76% of respondents have never placed a vote for a local official. This is why the first topic was about student engagement, so I hope you don't mind if I ask about specific policies in terms of increasing student engagement, increasing representation in general in our cities and counties. Essentially, my question is, will you help our area follow in the footsteps of other cities, counties, and states that have implemented policies that are empirically proven to increase voter turnout, such as compulsory vote, and increase voter satisfaction, such as switching from a first-past-the-post voting system to ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting? Thank you. I can provide more detail about these policies or statistics about the effect of these policies if you'd like.
Well, one thing that definitely needs to be a thing is mandatory voter registration and same-day voter registration. I don't know how I feel about compulsory voting, but I would love to talk with you about the topic. I frankly haven't given too much thought about it. But, you know, one of the reasons that I actually decided to run for city council in the first place a couple of years ago was to increase voter engagement, specifically in our younger communities. So legitimately, any idea that you have, that anyone has to make that a reality here in Broome County, I'm happy to talk about and consider implementing for sure.
I'll stay here as long as you want. I'm more than willing to talk about
Let's go to the wall after this and have an intense chat.
There we go. Thank you.
Good night. I want to take a question about heroin addiction. I'm talking about people who are really addicted right now, and we try to treat them, but we're not talk about people who are who doesn't know about drugs, about high school children, because we're not creating special programs to show the real life of people who use drugs. Because a lot of people in high school think drugs is a fun. It's not something special. In my mind, to create a special program to show real children in high school, show a movie about what we like to be we use drugs or different stuff. So my main question, why we not to help people before addiction? We must help them to create sport, show people the drug is bad, it's evil. Why not show it in high school?
Yeah, so I guess I talked about a little bit about what we're doing anyways in the Senate office in terms of that Yes Leads program, right? Keeping that program in place, rebranding it, and refocusing the attention on the heroin and the opioid issue, right? So it's a peer-based program that uses 650 high school students throughout SD 52 that are reaching over 5,000 younger children. I think this goes to the point I made earlier too about public school funding. right? When we see schools gutted of their funding, and we make these false floors and ceilings in terms of the way aid flows, school districts unfortunately have to cut enrichment programs. They have to cut substance abuse counselors, after school programs. That's why I think it's critically important moving forward that not only we continue to have these outside programs like I speak about with Yes Leads, but that we ensure that the appropriate amount of funding is flowing uninhibited to our public school systems so they can have those enrichment programs, those after-school programs, and make a positive impact on our younger people.
I'll also respond to this one. So we do some in-school prevention education as well. We take kind of a different approach. We take an approach that we believe in, unfortunately, because it's different than what the state approves. It won't be funded. So the state approves what they call evidence-based practices for prevention. My opinion is those evidence-based practices have proven to be a failure. My son, who passed away from a heroin overdose, was a Just Say No kid. You know, who's through the DARE program, a graduate, he had a certificate and everything. So I think that those programs are a complete failure. So we take kind of a different approach. Right now, most abstinence or most prevention programs in New York State address substances as all equal to students in high school. So they start with alcohol, marijuana, opioids, heroin, meth, and they do the talk that all drugs are bad. The problem is a lot of those students already know that people are doing fine drinking occasionally, socially. We're legalizing marijuana in a lot of states, either for medicinal purposes or recreational purposes. And they know, I mean, kids are not stupid. They know that marijuana isn't as dangerous as a lot of people say it is, and it's also not really the gateway drug to heroin. People who smoke marijuana are 3 times more likely to use heroin than a non-user. People who use opioid pills are 40 times more likely to use heroin than a non-user. So we know that marijuana is not the gateway drug to heroin, but that's what we're telling our youth in our prevention programs in schools. So my issue is we go in and we talk to kids and we try to convince them everything is bad, and then how can they believe us? I think it's an ineffective approach. Our organization takes a different approach. We say, look, we're not going to talk to you about the things that we're going to have a hard time convincing you are bad or scary, like marijuana and alcohol. I don't even want to talk to you about it at all. And then we talk about the things that we believe are truly, you know, the devil. They're very bad. Heroin, don't touch it, like it's going to ruin your lives. So we take kind of a different approach. I believe in it. One of the other things that I say to support my opinion on this is if we look at how we reduced drunk driving accidents and youths dying from drunk driving accidents, how did we fix that problem? We finally decided to accept that some of our kids were going to drink on an occasion, whether we like it as parents or not, and we decided we'd rather have our kids alive than not. So we said, you know what? We know you're going to drink every once in a while. Call us and we'll come and pick you up. And we made our kids' lives a priority over saying, don't drink at all. And I think that we need to take the same approach with this opioid epidemic. We need to say to our kids, look, you're probably going to drink on an occasion. It's pretty common that kids are going to experiment with marijuana as they grow up. Here are the things I really don't want you to ever do because it will kill you. And if you start using these substances and you find yourself in a path of addiction, please come and see me and talk to me about it. And I think that we're going to save more kids taking that more practical approach.
Great, thank you so much. Any other guest speakers like to touch on that topic or question? Great, all right. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, our honorable guests, for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. I don't know about you guys, but I learned a lot from this panel. We covered a lot of topics, and I look looking forward to more Binghamton Blueprint events in the future that can cover all of these priority issues in more detail. So on that note, we hope you're all inspired by what you heard tonight and that you're willing to join us as we reimagine the roles of Broome County. So please spread the word to your friends, your families, co-workers, and neighbors about our movement. And like Eleanor Roosevelt said, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So this is our future, and we can truly make a monumental difference if we believe in our dream of making Broome County a better place. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it. And sign up for our meeting.
Okay. Yay. All right.